Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Zebra Talk, the podcast where we go beyond the stripes and shine a little light onto the lives and the untold stories of the people who slide on their knees and count the threes. That's right, I'm talking about the referees, and today I'm joined by one of my newest friends. I've been really enjoying getting a chance to get to know him. He's a member of FCF from Finland. Riku, how are you today, Riku?
Hi, Odie. I'm really good today. It's rainy outside, but I mean, what better there's to do on a rainy day than do a podcast, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Get nice and cozy, get a little warm in there, maybe get some coffee or something. I got mine ready to go. How's everything been? Are you guys doing shows yet? Like, where are you at with wrestling right now?
We are at wrestling, so that we just got a few weeks back. We got our training hall open, and basically I've been going there almost every week, by half accident, but making sure that I get the ring work in. And then of course we will be recording or have recorded a show and putting it out soon, and maybe hopefully gonna have some monthly shows going forward. So everything's looking bright.
What's the best way to actually, before we even get into it, what's the best way to go about watching FCF or any Scandinavian wrestling? How do you guys usually distribute things?
Well, I only know that Body Slam Wrestling, they have an IWTV deal. So basically you can go to IWTV and watch Body Slam Pro Wrestling with English commentary there, which is pretty cool. For FCF, you just go to wrestling.fi. We are selling our VODs there. They have only Finnish commentary for now, but I think the matches can speak for themselves.
Sure, absolutely. I've seen a few of yours, and it definitely speaks for itself, like you had said. But it is pretty amazing that we're in this this phase of wrestling now, where we have New Japan or Body Slam or wherever that it is catered to a more global audience. People, I think, are being a lot more aware of the fact that the internet's a thing, streaming's a thing, and there are pro wrestling fans in literally every corner of the world that are going to want to watch your product. So might as well try and make sure that they can take it in as well, right?
Yeah, totally. I remember the days when you had to order DVDs from some guy from Germany, and they'd send it over, and you'd be waiting for months to see a show. Whereas nowadays you can see it on the day off, or even live, depending on the promotion.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's just go ahead and get right into it. You mentioned, DVD trading from Germany. Let's talk a little bit about who you are, where you're from, give a little bit of backstory to yourself, and then how you became a wrestling fan.
Okay. Well, basically, I was born in the city of Kuopio, which is in northern Savonia. It's around 4 hours by train from Helsinki, where I live now. Then we moved ahead from there to a city called Lahti, which is basically the Chicago of Finland. I'm not going to explain why, because there's a lot of explanations, but I grew up there. And the first thing that really caught my eye was video games. I always loved video games, different types of video games, reading video game mags. And the thing was that I started studying English a lot, and I really got into it so much that when I was in elementary school or something, I read English video game mags.
Sure.
And then I would open a mag one day, and I was just what is this WWF? What is this? I don't understand this.
Who are these guys beating each other up in these crazy costumes? Yeah,
exactly. There was Stone Colds and The Rocks and Ken Shamrocks and everything. I was what is this? And the thing was that I had during my childhood, I had some sort of semblance of wrestling. It was sort of I've seen Hulk Hogan in Gremlins 2. Right. I've seen someone play a WrestleMania game on the Nintendo Entertainment System.
Yeah, it's immersed itself so far into pop culture that it's hard to not know that it exists.
Yeah, but I didn't know what it was. That was the problem. So I was reading this mag, and I thought that was the first time I actually knew that, okay, this is a organization in the States that has weekly TV. They have pay-per-views. I learned what was a pay-per-view through that mag, and I was okay, this is something awesome. And then I got a game. I think it was WWF Warzone for the PS1. And I was okay, this is cool. This is really cool. This is just a world that I want to understand. And I kind of started to learn more. And then we got the internet connection home.
Sure.
And then I was like, okay, I'm gonna go look up like WCW, WWE, ECW, like whatever I found from the gaming mags. I just went and saw and started to like really learn to know a bit more.
Absolutely.
But I still hadn't seen a wrestling match.
Let's before we move on from there, let's kind of like paint a little bit of a picture for like the people listening at home, like how hard it is, you know, like a lot of my listeners, viewers or whatever are from North America, and we've been kind of spoiled with professional wrestling for the last like 40 years. Like how difficult is it really to like get your hands on like weekly content at this time? Like obviously things are really easy now, but like what was it like when you were a kid trying to like feed your wrestling fix?
Oh, I mean, for me, because we didn't have cable, we didn't have VCRs, and that was like there was no reason why we didn't have them. We just didn't have it because it wasn't something that you, at least for my parents, it wasn't like really necessary. But the thing was that like the only way you could see wrestling was that like you'd have like a satellite subscription or like, you know, cable TV, and you might see some wrestling. And I actually do have a small recollection from my childhood that I was at my grandparents' house and I turned to this channel called Eurosport.
Sure.
And I saw Jushin Thunder Liger there.
Nice.
And I was like, what is this? What is this? This is cool. Match ended. I changed the channel. But yeah, so you had to have like you basically had to like know when and how to watch it. And the access to that was really small. But I think the tipping point was in 2001 when there was this cable channel in Finland called Top TV that started. And when they debuted, their like first big like program acquisition was Late Night with Conan O'Brien.
Okay.
Which
very
also
cool.
is a big influence in my life.
Yeah.
But also SmackDown. And basically like it's iconic. It's like Saturday evenings, 9:50 p.m., 1 hour of SmackDown.
Yeah,
every week. And
it almost is like that same kind of like feeling as you know, the old NWA back in like the 70s 80s with like the 6:05 start time.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Please continue.
It was so great. And basically when I saw that, like, okay, this thing that I've been curious about is going to be on Finnish TV. So I signed up from day one, and what I saw blew my mind. I was like, oh my god, this is so cool. Wait, the WCW is invading, and we just got from the start of the invasion storyline.
Yeah.
So we kind of might have not known any better, but it was the coolest thing ever.
See, you and I are like very similar in our experiences in like discovering wrestling as far as like timeline wise. Obviously it was quite a bit easier for me. I was in the States or whatever, but like I started right at the same time with the invasion storyline and everything. And like I had been watching WCW for like, I don't know, maybe 6 months or a year or something like that. So I was well versed enough to know that like, oh, well, WCW will never be on WWF. ECW will never be on WCW or WWF or anything. And then, like you're saying, like what? They're all here now? But please go ahead.
It was just so like mind blowing. And the thing was that like we were basically just like maybe a month behind. And we didn't get any pay-per-views. So it was basically like people were sharing spoilers like in school and so on. Because like you have to remember, this was like school kids watching on a Saturday evening on a fairly accessible channel. Like it was a phenomenon. It was a boom.
Yeah.
And then in 2002, if I remember correctly, like WWE came to Finland the first time. I had a ticket. I went there with my best friend Aro. And it was like the most awesome thing. Like just remembering like the first match I ever saw live was John Cena versus Billy Kidman.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. So seeing like John Cena there and like thinking where he would then go, like blows my mind now. And yeah. And during that time, we also got like broadband internet at home. And I started devouring a lot of stuff from like, you know, different countries, different promotions, different eras. But the one that really struck me was Japanese wrestling. And through ECW, I found FMW, which was like this sort of an independent,
iconic Japanese wrestling. Yeah.
Well, first it was a deathmatch promotion, but then they became like a WWE copy. But there was this one wrestler called Hayabusa. And I was like, this guy blew my mind because I liked Rob Van Dam. Like Rob Van Dam was my first favorite wrestler ever. But then I saw Hayabusa and he was like much like
He's like Rob Van Dam 2.0, like or like the origins of Rob Van Dam.
The origins of Rob Van Dam. I don't know how to explain it. He was so great, and I became a huge fan of Japanese wrestling. And the thing is that because I've always been such a researcher by nature, wanting to learn so much about different things.
Sure.
I started to like finding so much information about Japanese wrestling that I ran out of material, and then I signed up for Japanese language courses.
Yeah, you're like, I've just learned everything that I can that's in English, so now I got to do this.
Yeah, so I started studying Japanese, and it took me a while, but basically like finding that like made me want to study Japanese. And yeah, so
how's your Japanese at this point?
Well, having lived there for quite a few times, I would say it's passable.
Sure.
I think.
Very cool. So let's continue on. Go ahead.
Yeah. So basically, like that was there during my teens. It was sort of like, it was sort of a triangle of things. Like, like I wasn't like always into wrestling. Like there were like peaks and valleys, like sometimes you're not into it, then sometimes you're.
Yeah, I kind of make the joke sometimes about like, people sometimes discover like dating and their like wrestling habit kind of like takes a backseat for a little while. We discover like social interaction and things like that. And then eventually we circle back around to it.
Yeah, I had that. So basically like I had a couple of years off, then like a couple of years in, a couple of years off. And then like it's kind of like walked with me with so many years that I didn't even realize that like, wait a minute, like I am hugely into this wrestling thing. And like, in my teenage years, like there was like 3 constant things. It was video games, anime, and wrestling.
Nice. What kind of video games are you into?
Oh, this is like the worst question ever to ask me because I like a lot of different games.
You just into all of them.
Yeah, if it's a game that I really like to play, it's got a good story or it's just fun to play. Like I like it. Like just recently I got into like the Devil May Cry series, which I don't know why I haven't played it before, but I'm now a fan.
It's pretty crazy when you find one of those titles that has been like having copies since you were like a child, and for whatever reason it just never really like struck your interest, or like you were occupied with Zelda or something like that, and you just never really gave it a shot, and then eventually you finally like dive in and you're just like, what is this? How have I been missing this?
Exactly.
I get that.
Yeah. So that was the thing. I've been going through Resident Evils now because with Resident Evil 8 coming out recently and so on. So
gotta catch up. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm personally a really, really big Assassin's Creed person. But like from the very first title, I feel like there's like a large like pop culture wave of fans that came in around Black Flag, and that's cool. They can enjoy it or whatever. But like I was there from game one. I've played every title that they've ever put out. It felt like it was made for me. I was really into parkour and like stealth, Hitman games, and I love medieval, culture and geography and stuff. And it felt like it was a game that was catered for me.
It was great series. I actually dropped off during 3, but I kind of like gotten back into it after Origins. So
like 3 kind of really dropped the ball. I almost like kind of had a little bit of a pause with it as well, but like 1 through like Brotherhood and Revelations and all that stuff was just like absolutely like groundbreaking. Assassin's Creed 2 I will put up against any game. It's amazing. But this is about wrestling, so let's get into how you actually physically started going to wrestling shows. Obviously your first one's in 2002 when WWE comes to Finland. At what point do you actually start going to shows, and is it like exclusively FCF, or like are you in other countries? Like what's going on?
Okay, so this is something that I need to make clear first, is that like basically I knew about FCF like from the day it started. Actually, I even knew about like its predecessor, Pro Wrestling Finlandia. Okay, which was founded in 2004, I think.
Sure. So you've got your finger on the pulse. Like there's nothing that's going past you at all. Like,
oh, I was like one of those guys like who lived on the internet and like would throw snowflakes around. Like, okay, sure. 5 stars.
Nice. Were you a tape trader? Like, did you ever get into like VHS and all that? Okay, cool.
Yeah. I was a tape trader. I was like getting like Chikara and like all the New Japan Noah stuff. Like watching like the 2005 Noah Tokyo Dome, like just like in under a week after it happened was like mind blowing to just get my hands on the freshest, newest show.
It's like, oh my god, here it is! It's right here.
Yeah. It just happened, and I heard about it. And
were you like
Kobashi?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were you into like
Kobashi
e-feds and all
Sasaki.
that stuff too?
I never actually got into e-feds that much, but like
Gotcha.
I just like dabbled in a bit, but
But you were saying Kobashi and
yeah, watching Kobashi and Sasaki do their legendary chop battle was like
yeah,
one of the best summer memories of my youth, to be honest.
it's pretty
It
incredible.
sounds pretty sad, but
No, you're among, similar-minded people.
yeah. But so I knew about the Finnish wrestling then. The thing was that like I wasn't really interested in it at all. It just didn't like the product didn't feel right to me. And I was like,
Sure. I
it
mean, if
exists.
your comparison at this point is like either WWE, FMW, Noah, New Japan, Jakara, and then you have like a like fledgling wrestling company that like has just started, like I'm sure that your standards are like a little bit higher than what the people can meet at this point.
maybe yeah, it was sort of a thing, but the first like actual like when I actually kinda thought I knew about wrestling was in 2009 when I went to Japan the first time in my life. It was like on a rainy Sunday, like today.
Very nice.
It was a DDT show in Shinkiba, which for those of you who don't know, Shinkiba is like you're going to the way outskirts of Tokyo into this
Shinkiba
small
first ring. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, that's where I made my Japanese debut.
Exactly. I knew you would love.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead,
I
please.
mention it. Yeah, I knew you would love that mention. So basically, Shinkiba first ring, going there, seeing wrestling live. And I was like blown away, not just that like, oh my God, I'm seeing these guys that I've like seen on my computer screen so many times.
Yeah.
But I was actually in Japan watching wrestling, something that I loved.
Who are you seeing? Like, what's the company that you're going to, and who are the wrestlers that you're seeing?
Well, I went to see DDT.
Oh yeah, so, you just said that. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I went to see DDT, and this was basically to give you the time frame. This was the time that it was like 2 months after Kenny Omega had just debuted. Debuted in DDT, and he had that like now famous Falls Count Anywhere match with Kota Ibushi, and Ibushi was there, and like he was sort of an upper mid carder and so on. I went there just to see DDT, and it was just like, yeah, I want to see a DDT show, and I was like really happy. And like,
I'm going to see DDT, and lo and behold, you're about to see like the next 10 years of like iconic, godlike professional wrestling and Kota Ibushi, Kenny Omega.
Exactly. Well, I didn't see Kenny there, but I did see Kota Ibushi, and I even talked to him, and I'm really happy that I got to talk to him then. But the thing is that there was one thing that I remember from that show is that like I remember, I think it was one of the preliminary matches, like one of the big matches, and they were doing chain wrestling there, and I was like looking at it, and I was like, these guys are actually really going at it. And I know that I could never do that.
Sure.
So I was sitting there and watching those guys wrestle, and I was like, yeah, if I ever would have wanted to become a wrestler, like I think that dream ended there, because I knew that like, yeah,
that's not
gonna be me.
That's kind of how I felt when I like first started getting in, because like as a kid, obviously you're thinking like, oh, I could go be WWE champion or something like that. And like you never know, you could be, but seeing people like Kota Ibushi or like Ricochet or something like that, like I'm the kind of person that I set my goals as high as I possibly can. So I was like, okay, if the competition for like being the greatest wrestler in the world is like Kenny Omega and Kota Ibushi and all these people, like I can try, but like I don't know if I'm ever actually gonna get there. Might as well, try and do this other role that like I can do very, very well and try and get to the highest possible level, which I feel is probably where your thought process came through.
Exactly. You just put it nail in the head. So there I was seeing that show, knew that like, okay, I don't think I'm ever gonna be a wrestler. And then like years roll on by, I do my military service. We have to do a mandatory military service here. I study, I get my university degree, and then I move to Helsinki. And I get a job in Helsinki. I work in the tech industry here in Helsinki. So I was like, okay, FCF is having shows. And this is like 2017, I think.
Okay.
And I had been to like 2 FCF shows between 2009 and 2017. And one was to go see Dick Togo, who was doing his first retirement tour.
Right.
And the other one was a free show at this sort of a shady fast food burger joint place called Snacky.
Okay.
And it was a free
Sounds
show. I
very
went
pro
there to see.
wrestling.
Yeah. I went there to see that. Had a okay enough time with a couple of friends. Just like nothing really mind blowing, but it was fun. It was wrestling. It was free. Can you complain?
Sure.
So then I go into if the first like FCF in 2017. I was like, well, I mean, I live here, so why not support locals? Because like during those years, I kind of like developed this sort of a support your local independent like kind of attitude that like
Yeah, absolutely. Like, why not try and stimulate like your local, not only like actual economy, but like your pro wrestling, you know, like community and economy and all that stuff.
exactly.
Like, they're only gonna survive if they have people there to help them survive, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I went there and I was really blown away that like in just a few years the whole product had like taken like leaps and bounds of like advancement and became more professional and actually like more enjoyable.
Mhm.
And overall had its own style, because one of the things that turned me off previously was that the Finnish wrestling style was basically that people were trying to copy like what they saw on like tape from the US or Japan.
Sure. So very
But there
like
was
WWE, like WCW eyes, kind of like TV wrestling.
yeah, and a little bit of like Ring of Honor and like those kind of like indie type of wrestling.
Sure.
But the thing is that like nowadays, like when you look at like when I went to CFCF the first time, like after my big break and like moving to Helsinki, I started to notice that okay, these guys are actually doing wrestling that's Finnish.
Yeah.
It's not trying to emulate anyone. It's doing its own thing, and that really like struck a chord with me.
How would you describe Finnish wrestling for someone who's never seen it before? What would you say are the major differences between like, you know, the States or the UK or Japan, wherever? Like, what's your guys' style like in your own words?
Well, we are pretty much close to a to an American and the British style in a sense. Like FCF, we're like a sports entertainment-y, not like fully, but like sports entertainment-y of a promotion. And the style is pretty universal in a sense that like it sort of has the same things as the US style would. But the thing is that because our characters are predominantly Finnish,
Yeah.
they speak Finnish and they have Finnish like tropes in them and like Finnish cultural peculiarities there.
So it's not even so much that like your guys' physical wrestling style is dramatically different. It's just that like you were appreciative of the fact that like you were the wrestling was acknowledging your guys' culture and was actually like bringing in like Finnish influences and things like that.
Yeah, basically, yeah, because it was doing like a Finnish style of wrestling, and I think that's something that I really like about like WXW in Germany, because they're also like, if you think about it, sure, they do like the same type of wrestling you can see like in, you know, Ring of Honor.
Yeah.
But then they're German and they have Germans, they have like Austrians, they have Swiss wrestlers, they have like their own unique cultural flair there. And that's something that I really like.
They let their geographic, you know, location influence all of the like cultural influences of the product that they create. Very cool.
Yeah.
So are you going to FCF regularly now at this point, or like is it just kind of, you know, you go for a one-off and you're thinking like, you know, you'd mentioned you want to kind of support the community, like is this kind of what led you into like being in the Finnish wrestling scene regularly?
Yeah, it was, because basically I just went there, I was blown away, like, hey, this is good. And basically I started to see, hey, why not, I'm gonna go to the next show, and then I'm gonna went to the next show.
Sure.
And then I got to know a group of guys who like regularly go to the shows and kind of became friends with them, and then like started to like hang around with those guys. And
one thing leads to another. Yeah.
Lo and behold,
let's get you in the ring. How did we get you in the ring?
Yeah, so basically, lo and behold, the whole deal was that like, yeah, I was for a couple of years like going to almost every show that the FCF had, because, you know, I enjoyed the product. It was sort of a good thing going. And the thing is that a couple of my friends who I went to the shows with, they actually also like signed up for the tryouts for like to become wrestlers.
Yeah.
And it's sort of a sad story, but the thing is that like I also signed up for the tryouts, but I was really sick.
Gotcha.
Really, really sick, and I couldn't attend.
Yeah.
So that was that. The thing is that like they had so big of a class that I didn't even think they would even like take me in as someone who wanted to become a referee.
Sure. Did they have
they had,
like any kind of precedent for like training referees at this point yet, or like what's that like?
Yeah, there was a couple of like cases where people were trained to become referees, but like sometimes people kind of like pivoted from wrestling training or wrestler training into
Right.
becoming a referee. So
But
basically that happened.
not necessarily so many people that like came in straight away to be a referee though.
Yeah, no, not that much. There's like a couple of like people who have done that like so far, but like not like a direct referee training. So
Sure.
basically,
you were
a
really
couple
sick.
of,
You couldn't make it into the class. You thought that the class was going to be too big. Go ahead.
yeah. So basically, well, the class was big because like it was the biggest class of new wrestlers in Finland ever.
Sure. Are we
So,
talking like 20, 30, like?
Well, I mean 8 people, but like still,
Oh,
like
okay.
that is
Gotcha. I mean, yes, that is a very large class. Yeah, absolutely.
especially in Finland, considering that like they actually had to like cut off people.
Yeah, not
So,
to
like,
mention
not
the fact
everyone
that
got
like
in.
you guys have just started, you know, like you're still like trying to figure out the nuances of like being able to give people enough like individualized attention and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, a couple of my friends got in and they were there, and it was sort of like, yeah, I'm just gonna go see them, support the crew and so on. And then of course, so this was in 2019,
Mhm.
and then the pandemic hit.
Yeah,
Everything stopped. Like, who knew what could happen? But then last year, when things kind of looked better,
Mhm.
I got a message from my good friend. He wrestles by the name of Alpha,
Mhm.
a dear close friend of mine. And he sent me a message that, hey, just so you know, there's going to be a referee class coming up this summer, should the pandemic allow.
Sure.
And I was like, okay, if you have it, let me know. I'll sign up.
Mhm.
And time rolls on. And basically then they publicize it. I sent my application. Okay, come on into the tryouts. And the tryouts come, and I am sick once again.
Oh no.
Yeah, and I
I'm
was
assuming
sick.
not COVID though, right? Like,
No, not COVID. So I've been
sure.
COVID free, thankfully, so far.
Sure.
But yeah, it wasn't COVID, but I was pretty like upset that like, okay, this happens the second time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fine. Well, then I sent an email to the head trainer, Regina Rusendahl, and she was like, yeah, no, don't worry about it. Like, I'm actually sick too. So it's like, okay, so like we're gonna have our first training session like on this date. So you can come in, we'll see how it goes. And like if you're good enough, like we'll let you continue and so on.
So
yeah.
what's your training physically looking like with Regina? Like, what are you doing when you actually get in there and start working with her?
Oh, we do basically like a training with in the referee class is basically just like if you would sign up for the basics of wrestling. So basically like we do like the warm-ups, do the bump training, kind of like, you know, all different drills. Of course, like some of the drills are more of a, you know, agility and like cadence and so on, but sort of like, you know, they're physical. You will break a sweat. You might even get gassed if you're intense enough, but basically like it's there's a level of intensity there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of that like crash course and like making sure that you're going to be safe anytime that you're in the ring. You know, if somebody needs to do things to distract you or something like that, if they need to bump you or anything like that, that, you know, you're not going to like kill yourself or anything like that.
Exactly, like all of those things, and it was really well organized.
It's nice to hear. Like there's a lot of variation when it comes to like professional wrestling training. You know, I've like personally, I walked into school thinking that, you know, like I was going to be signing like release waivers and filling out applications, and that I was going to have like a structured, you know, like this is what we're learning, this is how we go about learning it, blah 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 blah. And that was not my experience at all. I walked in and I gave somebody some money, and then they put me in the ring and said, do these things. And I was like, okay, cool.
No,
And like it was a very, very good school, and they taught me, in my opinion, like I think that it was a very, very good education once I realized that it wasn't going to be so like professional and structured or whatever. But yeah, like no knock on their training at all. Like I really, really felt like I had a good time there. But then, you know, all the way up through like what you're explaining, you know, like you had to fill out applications and send emails and like, you know, a lot of like actual like professional organization. It's kind of nice.
yeah, it's
There's
kind
a
of
wide
nice. And
variety in pro wrestling. Go ahead.
yeah, I mean, basically the whole training, to be honest, like it was sort of a even like executed professionally. So like we had homework, like the classes were structured and we knew what we were talking about and so on. And like basically, to be honest, like Regina is she is pretty much an actual coach.
Sure.
So she has that background in coaching, and that shows. She teaches those things really well. Outside of the physical training, we also had theoretical things.
Okay.
So basically, like, you know, watching through the Zebra Talk Q&As and like watching matches, making notes about the wrestlers, and like talking to Teemu Kytösaari about like what do you do in the ring, asking questions, like a lot of like this sort of a theoretical part too. So it was not just a physical training, but also a theoretical training and kind of like getting both and learning to study tape and so on.
Absolutely. I'm curious, you know, like you're one of the first guests that we've had on here, other than I think Ali, who's like really in their like first couple of years. I'm curious what kind of influences like Teemu had on your experience, as well as like, you know, being a part of Zebra Talk and like seeing the Q&As. Like, let's talk a little bit about how like, you know, just having resources has really affected you. Like what was your experience like with Teemu first and foremost?
Well, I mean, Teemu is one of those guys that like I can shoot a message at like 3 a.m.
Yeah, same.
Yeah. I can shoot a message at 3 a.m. and I can definitely know that there's going to be an answer. It's not going to be one line long. It's going to be multiple lines.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's very thorough. So that's been very good. Basically, like also.
Was he physically there like for your training when you started? I know he lives pretty far from where you guys do most of the wrestling.
Yeah, no, he was unable to come over because, you know, we were kind of trained during the pandemic.
Right.
So there was sort of those kind of things. So basically the training was that like it was me, Dominika, who is a great referee from Finland.
Right, absolutely.
And then there was Regina, who I praised already.
Yeah.
A great trainer. Then we had Juhana King Kong Karhula, who's a 15-year veteran as like a sub coach. And he was kind of in there to like motivate us to think about wrestling as not just like something you do, but something you think while you do.
Sure. Yeah.
So, all the intricacies and the artistic things.
I like that. I like that a lot, that you have like present thought while you're wrestling and not just kind of like reacting or like doing things that you like pre-planned or anything like that. It's critical thinking, which is very, very, very good. Very smart. Please continue.
Yeah, he was bringing that there and like giving that. And then someone that I've become good friends with, the son, who's like currently the Nordic champion.
Okay.
So he's also like, he was also there, sort of, you know, like a punching bag ragdoll.
Okay. Yeah.
Also there kind of like, so a very, very wrestler oriented, like Juho, who's one of our like more senior reps, who was also a great guy, was there a couple of times, but basically it was mostly wrestlers teaching referees.
Sure. Which like kind of can be a little bit of a like drawback to an extent, but like it sounds like you had a lot of like the right wrestlers teaching you. You know what I mean? Because like, you know, it sounds like you were really not like throwing shade or anything like that, but a little bit spoiled when it comes to like your training. Like it sounds like you had some really like good, you know, personalized attention, which is great. But like you're saying, you know, like wrestlers can teach us as much as they can teach us, but it's not until you have experiences yourself and when you have like influences from other referees who have done it that actually know the answers to the questions that you have, rather than just what they think the answers are. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And that's actually where Juho and Teemu were really like valuable, to be honest, because they were basically giving like on the spot guidance, like whenever they could, and like answering questions and so on.
Absolutely.
And like during when we had shows, like when Demo would make it, we would of course like have lunch with him, ask him questions and so on. And if he wasn't there, Juho would be the one like giving us, like his knowledge. So basically getting to know and like them and like getting to hear about them. And then of course Zebra Talk in a sense is also because like there's the Q&As, like watching and listening those, like making notes, hearing about like how some people think about this specific part of the match versus how this person thinks about it. But also reading through the like posting questions, like I posted a couple of questions and posted my match that I refereed there and so on. Basically has been a really good help. And basically just the thought of like knowing that like, okay, I'm in this group with this amount of people, people that I've grew up watching, people who I admire. For example, Aubrey Edwards, who's one of my favorite referees of all time.
Sure.
Seeing like her there, post there was like, okay, I'm like, I feel like I belong into something. And that's like something that empowers me as a referee to like do my best, because it's sort of like these people are there.
Yeah.
And they've got my back.
Absolutely. I personally, like, honestly, even I get blown away by like what Zebra Talk has become, like obviously like I was really lucky that, I had a nice idea or whatever, but like it's an entity unto itself, it is the referee community. And, it just is like it's a great example of just how much the referee community needed something to help one another learn, as well as like something to feel like an actual community and to show like how much they want to give back to each other. There's so many people that are in the group that want to try and help other referees be better and learn and travel and grow and things like that. It's been amazing to see it take off. Like when I started it, I thought it was just going to be like, I don't know, like I just wanted to know who the other referees in the world were. Like I have another group that I started a few years before that for comic books called Comic Talk that like has like 300 people in it and nobody ever posts in it. That's what I figured it was going to be. And then look at where we are now.
Yeah, exactly. And it keeps on growing. It keeps on growing because I know that like when we are going to get new Finnish zebras, like they're going to be in Zebra Talk day one.
Yeah, absolutely. It's pretty amazing. I think that and like the vets, like saying like, oh, I wish this was a thing when I was a kid, or like, the trainers like making sure that their new students are in the group. Those are the biggest compliments that, to me personally, it's just like they value this thing so much that they're like making absolutely sure like, okay, this is a great resource. You're a brand new student. Go get in there. Go learn. Just go soak it in.
Exactly.
But this is not a podcast about Zebra Talk. This is a podcast about you. So let's hear a little bit more about how you actually started doing like shows and things like that. Like, let's talk about your first show. What was it? When was it? What was your first match? Paint the picture for us.
Okay, I'm trying to think that like what would be the like. It depends on like what you consider a show. Do you consider a show where you sell tickets, or is it a show where there's a crowd present? It depends.
I consider a show something that is intended for fans.
Okay.
Because like it was the pandemic, obviously, so you're a little bit hindered as far as like what you can do in front of an audience and stuff like that. But if you actually put together a product that was meant to be seen by people, then that's your first show, in my opinion.
Okay. Well, I mean, my first ever match was in sort of this like, it was like a closed door event for our promotion, sort of,
Sure.
So I got to referee one match there. That was like fairly early in the training, but it was kind of like, hey, you want to hop in and ref a match or two? Like, sure, why not?
Did you feel nervous the way that you would, like almost like it was like a first show experience, or was it kind of a little bit more comfortable because there was no audience?
Well, I mean, because to be honest, like it was sort of like my first ever like proper event to meet like all the wrestlers and like the staff and like people there.
Yeah, I mean, like, basically at this point you've just been with like your 3 trainers, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And that was like my first like appearance in front of the whole like promotion and everyone in it. And I'm put in with like one of the top guys of the promotion, and of course there was one of the newer guys, but like it went well. I think it went well.
Who's in your first match?
Juhana Kinkon Karhula, who I just mentioned,
Right.
who taught me how to
Had been
think about
helping you
wrestling.
train. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and then Alpha, the friend who told me about
Nice. That's a
class.
great first introduction for you. I'm sure that gave you a lot of really like nice warm feelings.
Well, I mean, I was just honored to be there with like a good friend of mine, like just getting to like count to 3, or well, he lost that much, but
Sure, but I mean, that's wrestling.
being there in that moment when he's like wrestling in front of his peers, like, was great. But the thing is that, like, I think a few weeks after that, we were sort of like, okay, we're short on referees because some referees couldn't make it. So then I got a message from Regina that like, okay, pack your gear, you're refereeing tomorrow.
Yep. That's pretty great, right?
Yeah. So I was like, well, good thing I ironed my refereeing pants, because like, I kind of had the hunch that like somebody would have to step up and do a match. And this was like maybe 1 month into training, which was sort of, like pretty fast track there. So I went there. I had 2 matches. They went okay. I mean, the other one was basically like 3 seconds. So
sure,
what can you do?
Yeah.
But, like, yeah, I did well, but the thing was that like I also learned that like, okay, there's a lot of things that I need to learn.
Yeah.
And I got a lot of feedback. And that was good feedback, in a sense that like it told me that like, hey, focus on this, move a bit more in the ring, don't park yourself in the corner, like good things, like just help me learn. And from that, I started appearing like every month in all of our shows, sort of like doing at least 1 match. And it continued until this January, when we had our, so far, the first recorded show.
Okay.
Which kind of came on a surprise notice, because during this point, of course, COVID already had picked up, because like in late 2020 in Finland, COVID kind of the curve went a bit down, but it started to pick up. So we started to have more restrictions. So we did a closed door recorded VOD show. And what happened was that, okay, it was at such a short notice that no one else could referee that.
Yeah.
So I did the whole show. I think it was like, I don't even remember, was it like 9 matches or like 8 matches?
Sure.
But a long show.
Yeah.
With no breaks in between, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Like
it's
an
pretty
Iron
amazing
Man.
when you get like tossed in an Iron Man a match like that, or Iron Man a show like that.
Yeah. I Iron Man a show. I did that. I think, well, I didn't get like anyone told me that like, you screwed up that.
You're terrible. You're fired. Don't come back.
Yeah. Like it was like, okay, seems like I'm gonna ref in the next show too. Like that. That's kind of like approval.
Definitely.
So that was like the biggest hurdle, but I really liked that. And like that day was just crazy, because like not only did I have a Iron Man show to do, there was also the like, I think like I had a 20 minutes warning that like, hey, so there's this like camera crew from local media coming in.
Oh, nice.
We need to do like a short like improvisation match.
Okay.
So are you the only ref today? Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah, I'm just gonna the show, and you're gonna be on the news. Have fun.
Yeah. So that happened. So that was sort of a small thing. I did okay, but just like, it was exhausting, but you gotta do what you gotta do.
It's crazy how quickly you can get thrown like right into the deep end of professional wrestling. Like when I started, there just wasn't another referee on hand. So like just all of the shows that I was doing, they were like out in the sun. It was like 8 matches, and it was just for like a year, just go die in the sun. Exactly, and then you go to your first like normal show or something like that, and there's another referee there, and you're just like, how many am I doing tonight? 3? Okay, sure. And then like you were saying, like you were like what, a month into training, and all of a sudden like you're on shows and you're filming and stuff like that. Like, same thing. Like I think I was like 3 months into training when somebody found out that there was another referee available. And like that's what it is really, is like there's such a demand that the minute that somebody finds out that you exist as a referee in professional wrestling, and that like you're somebody that's reliable, boom, off you go.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. The thing is that like we do have like at this point we have like 4 referees in FCF, and yeah, I mean, like it's a good number to have.
Yeah.
But the moment that you start to notice that people like they might like can't just come because they have family reasons or they're working that day, like they can't change their shifts, then it's gonna fall, like most of the time it's gonna fall on me because I work a 9 to 5, like Monday to Friday. So
Yeah.
like Saturdays and so on are free for me. So it's sort of a
It's
okay, I'm gonna
crazy.
do this then.
It's crazy how much logistics can affect professional wrestling, especially for like
Yeah,
referees and stuff like that. Like
yeah.
we have a really great crop of young referees who've been filling in at Championship Wrestling from Hollywood and doing like
Mm-hmm.
primetime live and taking
Exactly.
all of the like, GCW shows that keep coming to the
Mm-hmm.
West Coast and stuff like that. Because like, uh, Jeremy Marcus has signed to New Japan now, so he can't do
Mm-hmm.
any of that stuff. And Nick
Right.
Bonanno is like leading Championship Wrestling from Hollywood now, so he's too
Right.
busy to do any of that stuff. And I'm not doing shows during the pandemic. So like there's a whole big crop of like young refs in Southern California right now that like just because the three of us aren't available and because, Knox is signed and Marty Elias isn't really doing shows, they're getting thrown right into the deep end, like a year in, like, all right, go do like a GCW World Championship death match, have fun, hope it goes well. And to their credit, like they're doing extremely well. Like Allison Lee, Chad Rico, like kudos to them. But anyway, so you're becoming an actual like integral like part of the family with FCF now at this point. You are part of the family at this point. Like what kind of goals do you have for yourself long term? Like obviously the pandemic isn't over yet, but things are getting a little bit better. Like are you guys vaccinating over there right now? Like like do you have plans for like shows in the near future, or what's that like?
Yeah, so basically like there's the vaccination rollout is going well enough, I'd say. So like we're getting that sorted out. Basically in terms of shows, we're looking to like maybe have a taped show and maybe doing like monthly shows like going forward. Like
Sure.
Like I can't say for certain right now, but that's the plans. And of course, at some point we would love to have our biggest show of the year, which has been postponed like 4 times already, with one of the biggest matches in Finnish wrestling history for the championship. Kind of like having that show too, like that's also on the cards for us.
Let's explain to our viewers a little bit what that's going to be. This is a good opportunity to hype that up for whenever it happens. But what's your biggest show of the year, and what's the match that you're referring to?
Yeah, so basically the biggest match in FCF Wrestling and overall in Finnish wrestling, the biggest show is Talvisota, which means Winter War. And basically it's like our WrestleMania, our Wrestle Kingdom, our Bound for Glory, Super Card of Honor, the biggest of the big. Like It's the longest running and like the big cap off for a lot of feuds. And we have the championship match like 5 years in the making, I'd say, of Shemeikka, who's basically our ace, versus Juhana King Kong Karhula, who's the champion.
Gotcha.
It's going to be a huge match overall.
And
so
to be determined when it actually gets to take place, but hopefully, it'll take place and it'll go well. And then maybe viewers, that see this will be able to look that up at some point.
Oh, totally. I mean, it's the hype has been like high for that show, but like I just hope that we get there sooner than later.
Yeah, absolutely. But for you personally, like what are your goals long term? Like if you had a magic wand and you could write the rest of your future, like what do you want your life in professional wrestling to look like?
So I think like I'm sort of like I approach like life and like my career and everything in sort of like this sequential approach. So I like make like I do have the big milestone there, like the big super end goal, but I have smaller goals. So let's say like one of the smaller goals like right now that I really want to do is basically to go abroad. Like I think like Sweden or Denmark or Norway.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like some of the countries close to us, go to another promotion and do a couple of matches there, see how it goes, learn there, make some contacts, and kind of like get to know people, get to like know what it's like to work in different promotions.
Yeah,
like
diversify your network. Yeah,
but also what I want to do is also to bring that knowledge then like to Finland and share it with other people, and also
Right.
like build myself as a better referee so I can serve what we do here in Finland better.
Mhm.
And then of course, then obviously like this, like a throwaway goal would be like, main eventing the Talvisota main event, like doing the referee job there. Like, of course, that's like one goal to go forward to. But then of course, one personal goal for me is like, I would definitely want to like referee in Japan at one
Mhm.
point, and sort of
we
like,
never really like got any kind of like reason why you ended up in Japan. Obviously, you're like a big fan of the culture and like you know the language and everything, but like what was it that actually took you there in the first place?
well, I just wanted to go there. I just wanted to live there. It was sort of like, if I don't do this now,
Mhm.
I'll regret it. So I've been there a few times. The longest time I was there was like when I was studying in the university. I lived in Hiroshima and I lived in the countryside of Japan and so on. So that was sort of a thing that made me appreciate the culture more and so on. And I didn't go watch a lot of wrestling because I was sort of in a lull phase.
Kind of one of those, valleys. Sure.
Yeah. So basically, the thing is that like I just basically it's because of wrestling. Like I found Japanese wrestling. I started studying Japanese. I started watching
Japanese
anime.
culture. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and then this like the thing is that like I kind of want to take these things to the extreme. So what happened with me with anime was that like we went to a lot of cons with my friends and we realized that like, okay, these cons aren't as good as they could be.
Okay.
So what happened was that we started our own convention, and it became, and it still is, one of the most prestigious anime conventions in Finland. With the best
Fantastic.
guests. And
Let's talk about it.
yeah,
Like what's it called?
Desukon, like DESU Con, and it's held in my hometown of Lahti.
Okay.
But it's like basically the thing was that like we started it with the mindset that like, okay, if those old guys, old farts, the guys who were doing the conventions, they don't want to do it well, we're gonna do our own.
Yeah.
Well, then it kind of snowballed because we wanted to do a smaller event, but then it grew into this a bit bigger event.
You guys did it a little too well.
Yeah, and it became a landmark event, and yeah, I did that for like a few years. Then I was like, yeah, time to move on to the next thing.
Sure. It's pretty amazing, like we were mentioning earlier, like how much of an influence a single person can have on a community and on, like their own environment and their culture and things like that. You were motivated because there was a lack of an experience that you wanted to have to a standard that you have. So you just made it. So kudos to you. Congratulations.
Yeah, I mean, like, to be honest, like I'm not saying that I did it myself. Like I'm saying like the group of people that had like gathered.
Yeah,
it was like just that working together for a common goal. That was the best thing about it.
But that's what I'm saying is like each one of those people is an individual that had a need and had a desire to improve the world around them, and because they had that motivation, it became a reality.
Yeah, so we did that. And then like I kind of like during the university years, I was kind of like also like, hey, I want to go to Japan once again and so on, and apply for exchange and so on, and went there. And yeah, I speak the language somewhat okay, I'd say. It's sort of a thing to do there that like basically, I mean, refereeing in Japan, why not? Like,
yeah, I mean, that's a huge accomplishment.
I mean, you did it, so why can't I do it?
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to just see more and more and more people from all over the world just traveling amongst the continents, not even necessarily like just to Japan or to the States or anything like that. But like, I would love if more, referees, not even just myself, could like go to Finland or go to Germany or like, that's, kind of why we came up with the Zebra Talk Fund, was like to try and help facilitate that. Well, very cool. Thank you very much for your time today. We're kind of wrapping things up a little bit, but I do like to offer my guests an opportunity for the last couple of minutes of each interview. If there are any shows that you would like to promote that are coming up, if there are any promotions, obviously we've talked about FCF quite a bit, but if there's anything else that you think, folks should like pay a little attention to, any wrestlers or referees that you think maybe the world hasn't really given notice to yet, or maybe they haven't really discovered them yet, now is the time to kind of try and shed a little light onto that. And please also plug all of your socials and everything. So go ahead, the floor is yours.
Good, thanks. So of course, as I mentioned, like FCF Wrestling, my home promotion, the promotion that has decided that pro wrestling is for everyone.
Yeah.
So that's like we're an inclusive promotion. So like everyone's welcome to our events and so on. You can find us at wrestling.fi, and from there you can also find our newest events, be it recorded or live. We're, as I mentioned, aiming to have a monthly event going forward. Of course, considering what the pandemic restrictions will be, but
yeah, no guarantees, but we're trying.
No guarantees, but I will say, like, I'm optimistic how things are going, so we're gonna get there. So monthly shows. Then of course, I have to give a good shout out to Freedom Pro Wrestling Sweden. That's run by Vegan. Vegan, who I've never met, but I am a huge fan of because he's just one of the most positive wrestlers I've ever met. Then of course, Body Slam in Denmark. They're basically like, I really love like interacting with their Twitter account on Twitter.
Nice.
So that's pretty nice, like doing that stuff there. So those are the promotions. In terms of referees, of course, like everyone in FCF, like, you know, Teemu Kytösaari, Mr. Close Enough. Definitely like
close enough.
yeah, definitely.
Is it Teemu? I don't really know how to pronounce that.
Exactly, yeah. Teemu Kytösaari. Then Juho, you can find him on, I think, on Instagram as Judge Juho, Juho. Then Dominica, of course, you can find her on Facebook and Instagram with Ref Domi, so that's Ref Domi. Of course, myself, Ref Riku, REFRIKU on Twitter and Instagram, of course.
Absolutely.
I tend to be more active on Twitter because I like Twitter a bit more.
Sure.
And then for the wrestlers, I mean, who should I mention? Well, first of all, of course, Alpha FCF on, like if you search Alpha, like ALFA and FCF on Instagram, you will find him on Facebook. Yeah, it'll pop up. You'll see him. Definitely one to look out for. Then I'm going to give a huge shout out to my space friends, Avaruusilmiö 3000. Which basically means the Space Phenomenon 3000, a nice lucha-inspired tag team from outer space. So Walta and cool. Stella. So they're two people to look out for. Then of course, you know, Ken Kallio, who's basically one of our more beloved newer wrestlers.
Okay.
Then the Sun. The Sun is of course like a great wrestler, a great person. Really love talking with him about anything. You can find him on all the social with the Sun, so it's like the Sun with an A, not a U.
Okay.
You can find him there. I think it's the Sun Wrestler on most socials. Then of course, like, who could forget Regina Rosendahl, like the one of the like most important persons in Finnish wrestling scene today.
Yeah.
Definitely like give her a follow on any social. You can find her at TOO Regina on all the socials. Juhana Karhula, of course, King Karhula on all the socials. A legend, a great person to talk to, very smart, really like him. Please don't fire me. He's our DM.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing. Like, this has been one of my favorite parts about, like, not just, Zebra Talk itself, but the podcast and everything, being able to, there's only so much wrestling or wrestlers that I know about just from like being able to scan the world. That, I do get to find out about people like Regina from folks like yourself and just be like, oh, wow, there's this incredible wrestler that's just like a legendary fixture in their home country that, like, for whatever reason, I haven't had a chance to see it yet, but now I do. And now I'm that much better in my own wrestling experience because I know who these people are.
Yeah. I do have to give a good shout out to Shemeka and Yoni, who are like two of our top baby faces. Really fun guys. Like a big shout out to those two guys. So yeah. And of course, our ring announcer, Jonathan Katwe, who's a really close friend. He's not on any socials, but just want to give a nice little shout out to him because he will be listening to this.
Very cool. You're the first person to actually give any kind of nod to a ring announcer, so I really appreciate that. talk a lot as referees about how we kind of maybe don't get like as much of a nod or credit or pay as we would like. But you know, I think the ring announcers and the commentary team and like the backstage announcers and things like that, they kind of, it goes even further down, you know. So it's a measure of who you are as a human being that like you would take the time to talk about a ring announcer. So kudos to you for that.
Well, I mean, I just love like everyone in like FCF, like our like commentary team, and basically the people who you don't even see. Who work behind the curtain, like people like Nina, Minna, Crystal, and so on and so forth. Like those people, like who do important jobs in the promotion that our fans wouldn't even see. Like those people are like so important. I just respect the work that they put into.
We were, my girlfriend and I were just watching SmackDown this morning, and whenever you hear this, this week's SmackDown was the one where they're doing the Parade of Champions, and they did the announcement that like, you know, WWE is going back on tour, and they're celebrating all of their champions, and rightfully so. But my girlfriend kind of looks at it and she's like, you know who like should get some applause once in a while is like the guy who is making like all of the Zoom screens work for the fans, you know, or like the person who's making all the graphic designs, or like the cameraman or something like that, you know. Like, yes, the champions are very important. They're what make the show exist, you know. Like we wouldn't be anywhere without all of the wrestlers. But yeah, it's nice to give everybody else a little bit of a nod every once in a while. So thank you for that.
But the thing is that who pays to see those people? That's the thing.
Nobody. And that's why we have a Parade of Champions. Well, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate your time, and I appreciate hearing your story, and I'm very excited to see where your story goes from here.
Thank you. Likewise. I'm happy to talk about Finnish wrestling, and like if I could just say something in Finnish, just a big thing. Iso kiitos kaikille, jotka kuuntelitte. Käykää wrestling.fi, ostakaa lippuja, tukekaa suomalaista showpainia. Me tehdään tästä paljon parempi skene, mikä se on koskaan ollut.
And would you mind giving us a little translation?
Buy tickets, come to shows. Let's make the scene much better than it has ever been.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for being here. And thank you folks for listening, watching, however you're taking this podcast in. We really appreciate that you're here. If you would like to support the Zebra Talk Fund, please go to www.prowrestlingtees.com/Zebra Talk. We've got a whole range of merch, t-shirts, sweaters, hats, COVID masks, whatever you like. Obviously, you can see I'm wearing one of our new tracksuits. Also, shout out to Squared Circle. But yeah, if you would like to be featured on the show, please send me an email to zebratalk123@gmail.com. You can find Zebra Talk on all the socials at zebratalk123. If you're a referee and you are not already a part of the group on Facebook, please reach out to me. I'm Robert Odie Brown. You can also find me on any socials as Odie1Canody. And yeah, let's get you in Zebra Talk. Let's get you learning and get you immersed in this like amazing global community that has really changed my life and, you know, a lot of other people's lives. So thank you very much for being here, Riku.
No, the pleasure is all mine.
Thanks, folks.